All through the North Pole. Illumination number 7. The harsh Arctic wind howled across the barren landscape as a military envoy vehicle trudged through the thick blanket of snow. Inside the cramped confines of the Army platoon truck, 5 soldiers huddled together, their bodies jostling with each bump and dip in the treacherous terrain. The group consisted of Gus, Hansen, Arnold, Reagan, and the newest addition to their ranks, Quimby. Quimb, a southerner unaccustomed to the biting cold, couldn't contain his frustration any longer. "Fucking bullshit getting sent up here," he grumbled, his breath visible in the frigid air. "I'm from the South, homie. I was expecting to get sent to like Iraq or somewhere warm, not fucking Santa's workshop to sit and freeze my nuts off in the snow." Arnold, clearly annoyed by Quimb's constant complaining, retorted sarcastically, "You bitch so much to keep warm, don't you?" Undeterred, Quimb pressed on, "Yes, I do as a matter of fact. The fuck we doing up here?" Hansen, attempting to offer some clarity to the situation, explained, "They said we're on our way to some environmentalist research base to take up guard positions." Quimby's frustration only grew at this revelation. Environmentalist bullshit stuck my ass in the snow? Fuck, man. The fuck they need guards for anyway? Nah, sounds like there's some shady Russian shit going on with this shit, man. The tension in the truck was suddenly broken by Gus's laughter. With a mischievous glint in his eye, he asked, "You know what we're really doing up here, right?" The other soldiers, save for Quimb, erupted into laughter, clearly in on some inside joke. Confused and slightly irritated, Quimby questioned, "What?" Arnold, still chuckling, warned, "Gus always makes up bullshit conspiracy stories to scare newbies like you. He did this last time we were deployed together. Don't listen to him." Gus, undeterred by Arnold's warning, leaned in conspiratorially. "I didn't bring it up 'cause of the noob," he insisted. "I brought it up 'cause it's a legit thing up here. I heard all about it." He began to twirl his finger dramatically, gesturing first to the ceiling of the truck and then to the floor. "Right under this whole part of the planet, there's supposedly an alien city, all through the ground underneath the ice of the North Pole. Some people say that it stretches all the way around the world with vast, huge tunnels and shit." Quimby couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of Gus's claim. "So you're telling me that we're going up here to fight some kind of alien scourge or something? Or find an entrance to an alien city?" Ha ha! Gus, clearly enjoying the reaction he was getting, continued to spin his tail. Maybe we're going to guard the scientists who are working up there dissecting the aliens. The environmentalist thing is just a cover-up." The other soldiers, caught up in the moment, began to chime in with their own outlandish theories. "Maybe there's a secret underground war going on," Arnold suggested with a grin. Reagan, not to be outdone, added, "I heard that Hitler escaped in a U-boat to the North Pole at the end of World War II, and he's down there to this day working with an alien shadow cult that controls the world government and shit." Hansen laughed heartily. "Ha ha ha. Yeah, and Elvis is down there with him." "And Kurt Cobain," Reagan chimed in. The soldiers continued to one-up each other with increasingly ridiculous additions to their conspiracy theory. "Freakin' the pilot chick, Amelia Earhart," Gus offered. "Nelson Mandela," Arnold added. Reagan, caught up in the absurdity, exclaimed, Yeah. Haha. And that chick who goes in the elevator and never comes out in that YouTube video, that's where she went. The aliens and Hitler took her to the North Pole." Quimby, despite his initial annoyance, found himself smiling and laughing along with his fellow soldiers. "Y'all are bullshit," he said, shaking his head in amusement. Suddenly, without warning, the truck was slammed by something from the outside, violently jostling the men inside. The laughter died instantly as the soldiers instinctively reached for their weapons, bracing themselves for whatever might come next. "What the fuck was that?" Quimb shouted, his earlier amusement replaced by genuine fear. Before anyone could answer, the truck was hit again. And then a third time, the force of the impact tipping the vehicle onto its side and sending the men tumbling. Heart-pounding, the soldiers clambered out of the overturned truck, emerging into the harsh Arctic night. Snow whipped around them in every direction, obscuring their vision and making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Dark hills of snow loomed ominously in the distance. Without warning, a dark, shadowy figure darted by, barely visible in the swirling snow. In the chaos that followed, Hansen suddenly vanished, as if swallowed by the night itself. Another shadowy figure flashed past, prompting Arnold to fire his gun blindly into the darkness. The sound of the shots was quickly swallowed by the howling wind. "What the fuck is going on?" Quim screamed, his earlier bravado completely gone. Reagan, trying to maintain some semblance of control, shouted back, "Terrorist or something. Stay sharp, bro." Arnold, his voice tinged with panic, called out, "Where the fuck is Hansen?" No sooner had the words left his mouth than another dark figure swept by, this time seizing Arnold and dragging him away into the night. His terrified screams echoed briefly before being silenced by the relentless wind. "The fuck?" Quimby cried, his eyes wide with terror. Gus, peering into the swirling snow, suddenly shouted, "I think I see 'em." Without waiting for a response, he charged off into the blizzard. The sound of gunfire erupted, then just as quickly fell silent. Now only Quimby and Reagan remained, standing back to back with their weapons at the ready. They paced in a tight circle, eyes darting frantically in all directions. "Stay behind me," Reagan ordered, his voice tense. "Don't break this position." Quim nodded silently, his body shivering from both cold and fear. For a moment, all was quiet, save for the howling wind. Then, without warning, a massive, hair-covered figure leapt atop the overturned truck. It was a Bigfoot, its muscular frame silhouetted against the night sky. The creature threw back its head and roared, revealing rows of sharp, bloody teeth. "Holy shit!" Quimby screamed, his voice cracking with terror. Both men opened fire on the beast, but it effortlessly leapt away, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as it had appeared. "Holy fucking shit," Quim repeated, his mind struggling to process what he had just seen. Before either soldier could react further, the Bigfoot landed directly in front of them, its massive form towering over the terrified men. It roared again, the sound reverberating through their bodies. Instinct took over, and both men turned and ran, their feet pounding against the snow-covered ground. They could hear the creature giving chase, its heavy footfalls keeping pace behind them as they fled for their lives. "Keep going," Reagan shouted, urging Quimby on as they raced through the darkness. The men continued to run, their lungs burning from the exertion and the frigid air. Gradually, the sound of pursuit began to fade, but they pressed on, unwilling to risk slowing down. Suddenly, Quim's foot came down on something that crunched beneath his boot. He stumbled to a stop, lifting his foot to reveal a candy cane, its red and white stripes stark against the pristine snow. The two men exchanged bewildered looks, their minds reeling from this surreal discovery. "A candy cane?" they said in unison, their voices a mix of confusion and disbelief. Their moment of puzzlement was shattered as the Bigfoot suddenly landed before them, its massive form blocking out what little light remained. With a deafening roar, it reached out and seized Reagan in its powerful grip. Quimby, acting on pure adrenaline, raised his weapon and fired at the beast. To his horror, the shots seemed to have no effect on the creature. With terrifying ease, the Bigfoot swung Reagan around and hurled him through the air. The soldier's screams faded as he disappeared into the darkness. "What the fuck? Fuck you!" Quimby shouted, his voice a mix of rage and terror. He turned and ran once more, risking a glance over his shoulder to see the Bigfoot standing motionless, watching him flee. Quim pushed on, his legs burning with exertion. "I'm not fucking built for the snow," he gasped, his southern roots ill-suited for this Arctic nightmare. Just as he thought he might have escaped, the Bigfoot suddenly appeared before him, landing with earth-shaking force. It roared directly in Quim's face, the hot breath of the beast washing over him. Overwhelmed by terror, Quim's fingers went limp, his weapon falling uselessly into the snow. His legs gave out and he collapsed to the ground, certain that his end had come. The Bigfoot reached down and seized him in its powerful grip. The last thing Quimby saw before losing consciousness was the dark landscape rushing by as the creature leapt away, carrying him off into the Arctic night. An indeterminate amount of time later, Quim's eyes fluttered open. He found himself in a room with red brick walls, adorned with green garland and tinsel. Directly in front of him, through a glass window, he could see another room filled with workbenches and half-built or wrapped toys. As his senses slowly returned, Quim became aware of a searing pain in his head and limbs, To his horror, he realized he was nailed to a crucifix, with candy cane spikes driven through his hands and feet. A crown of thorns pierced his scalp, securing a green elf hat to his head. Christmas lights were strung around his body and the cross, transforming the grotesque scene into a macabre parody of a Christmas tree. Quimby's eyes darted around the room, his mind struggling to comprehend the nightmarish situation. Hypothermia, he moaned, his thoughts scattered and confused. Suddenly, a loud whistle pierced the air. Quimby squinted through the glass window, his vision blurry but slowly focusing. To his astonishment, he saw a large green door swing open on the other side. A line of Sasquatch, each wearing a green elf hat and green suspenders, marched into the room, growling as they took their places at the workbenches and began tinkering with the toys. "What the fuck?" Quimby whispered, his voice barely audible. The sound of another door opening drew his attention back to his own room. A massive figure, unmistakably a Sasquatch wearing a Santa hat, stood breathing heavily in the doorway. Its shadow fell across Kim's face, plunging him into darkness. Kim's eyes widened in terror, his body trembling uncontrollably as the creature approached. The last thing he heard before losing consciousness once more was a deep, rumbling voice that chilled him to his very core. As the sound echoed through the workshop, the scene faded to black, leaving behind only questions and the haunting image of a nightmare before Christmas that Quimby would never forget.